What's going on, gamers? Today we're doing a little beginner-oriented video. I asked you guys what your burning questions were about how to learn Uni, and you guys gave me a lot of answers. 92 comments on Twitter and a bunch on YouTube as well. 24 comments over here. So we have gone through, me and the chat have helped pick the ones that we find to cover pretty much everything you guys asked. This list of questions is what we're going to be going through today. Going to be having chapters down below. You can jump to questions. Hopefully you watching this video, if you weren't here, you also have these questions and they're very helpful to you. And it's time we jump in. That was pretty good. Your first step when you start the game is going to be picking a character. And I just want everybody to know that every character in this game is 100% viable and playable. There is no need to look at tier lists when you're picking a character. Obviously, other characters are going to be stronger than others. But if you're looking at this game and you're like, man, I want to play Orie, but like, I heard she sucks because this one guy on Twitter said it one time. Like, no. This game's system mechanics are really strong, so every character can thrive. And also, for this current patch that we're playing on, every character is strong and is scary. Playing the character you enjoy is going to be really important to helping you learn the game. Some people talk about, like, I want to play Carmine, but I'm scared of negative edge, so should I start with Lene? And it's like, if you don't want to play Lene and you're just playing her so that you can eventually play Carmine, don't do that. Just play the character you want to play. That is the most important takeaway I have for you. After picking your character, that's when you get to the point of, what do I do next? You know, there's neutral, there's offense, there's defense, there's the grid, there's your combos. You know, there's a lot going on. How do I spend my meter? Knowledge checks. There's a lot to learn. And I think when you're starting out, the best thing for you to do is to just do whatever you want to do. And what I mean by that is that if you pick Seth and you're like, dude, his combos are so sick, I'm just going to sit in training mode and do combos all day, then that's perfect. That's what you want to get better at. You just do combos. Picking something to improve on can definitely be difficult. What I will say is don't tell yourself, I want to be on the win screen. Like, don't play to win, play to improve. So if you're playing this game and you're finding yourself on the back foot a lot, you know, you're playing against strong players, you're not getting your turn on offense that much, and that's a great time to just shift your focus to playing defense. Don't think to yourself, I want to get around, or I want to get a game. Just think to yourself, I want to tech a throw, or I want to not get opened up by this overhead, or something like that. You don't need to focus on getting on the win screen. It's just more so about focusing on what you can improve on in that moment. Generally, when you play against stronger players, you're going to have more opportunities to work on your defense because you're just going to be on defense more. And vice versa. If you're playing against somebody weaker, then you get more chances to practice running your offense. And that is something that you can notice and take advantage of. If you're getting a lot of opportunities to run offense, then maybe try something that you don't normally go for and just see what happens, you know? There's a lot of different ways that you can improve, and that's also why, like, it's never a waste of time to play against, like, a weaker player, or some people like to think, which is a little bit of a silly mindset, in my opinion. So to answer, what do you start with? It's whatever you want, and also whatever just fits the situation. Don't try and force yourself to get better at offense when you're on defense most of the time. I got a lot of questions about how to use Rebeats, and what we're going to talk about is how to use them offensively, and then also how to punish your opponent for using them against you. Just to cover what a rebeat is, it's when you use a move in the reverse order of light, medium, heavy. So this game's ABC. You can go backwards in this game. You can go C button to B button to A button. You can do any order. So if you're standing over here, your C button as Lene is going to be -7. But if you cancel it into 5A, and you whiff that 5A, you can see in the frame advantage over there that it says -1. And that's what a rebeat is, if you're not aware. For using them offensively, I'm going to get a lot more complicated now. For using them offensively, there's a couple things. So first of all, what a lot of people said is that they feel like when they rebeat, then they just lose their turn. But when they frame trap, it doesn't catch their opponent. And I saw a question saying, can you react to rebeats? And the answer to that is yes. You can actually react to your opponent doing a rebeat and then picking an option after that. Is it hard to do? Yes, but it is possible. So lots of times, like, say for example, you're doing this frame trap, right? 5C into Akuga. Your opponent might not mash, and you're like, why are they not mashing? But then, as soon as you go for a rebeat, you're like, okay, well then if they're not mashing, I'll rebeat and take my turn, and then you get hit. And that is because rebeats are reactable, so your opponent is seeing your 5A animation, and then pressing a button. Now, this can be frustrating to deal with if you're playing offense with rebeats. So, how do we take advantage of this? Well, one of the main ways is by using a spacing trap. So you can use a rebeat, and then you'll notice that this button is whiffing. It's actually only connecting because I'm dashing into it. If I don't dash, this Hyde 3B does not connect. There are other ways to take advantage of this too, like you know, like Lene can do like a up back fireball, for example, to manipulate your opponent's options. What I'm trying to say is that the rebeat is a reactable situation that your opponent can see and then make a decision. But the decision that they make is most of the time going to be something that you can do counterplay to. So say for example you're ending your block string and the Hyde is doing a fireball, right? Well then you can jump over it. Or say for example, like earlier we showed the spacing trap. That's not going to work here because you're attacking against a fireball. So that's when you have to change up what you're doing. So then maybe you'll jump forward next time, right? It's really important when you're running offense to pay attention to what your opponent does when you rebeat. That's the main takeaway here. And this situation is going to be very similar when you're doing it the other way. So if you're playing defense and you see Hyde rebeat, you know, you're going to pick a decision to stop him from doing something. And likewise, Hyde is going to be able to do something similar. So just like we just talked about, where you can whiff punish your opponent can do the exact same thing to you. And that situation is always going to be going back and forth. So I hope this kind of explains how you can do something on defense against rebeats, because they are reactable, and then take advantage of that. You can react to the rebeat, you cannot react to what comes after that. But when you see the rebeat, that's how you know that you can make a decision, is what's important. Another question that I got was just how to use concentrate. Concentrate is pretty good just as a way to gain some grid while your opponent is respecting you. This isn't going to come up as much if you're playing a character like Lene, you know, who's a lot faster and like closer range. But if you're playing a character like Gordeau, who kind of, you know, likes to keep his opponent out, you know, you have the threat of this move at any point, or Bee Reaper flying at you suddenly. Gordeau can kind of use this to get some quick grid by just threatening your opponent with his buttons. Because your opponent is so scared of you pressing, just concentrating at this stage is really good. Because your opponent is already respecting you, so they're not going to press anything. And you can kind of like, even if you just tap concentrate a little bit, it's going to give you some grid. The minimum frame duration of concentrate is 16 frames. So if you tap concentrate and your opponent tries to react, then you can also kind of like catch them reacting to your concentrate. And then the longer you hold concentrate, the more grid you start to gain. Another character like Kaguya is a good example, who has like these long range zoners that are really easy to shield. But because your opponent is expecting you to shoot these shots, that's when you can just concentrate and just take advantage of the threat there. Perhaps the most known question, or most asked question, is how to run offense and make your pressure feel scary. When you play against players who have been playing for a long time, it often feels like your offense doesn't let you open up your opponent a lot. And I think this is happening because people are coming from other fighting games where if you block a lot, then, you know, like if you block too much, you'll probably be in some sort of like 50-50 high-low situation, or like really hard to react to overhead. You You might be getting a hit by a lot of these overheads in Uni. But the truth is that Undernight overheads are not that fast. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I don't get hit by them. Let's be real. But they're not that fast to the point where they're unreactable. The reason why overheads land on people is that there's just a lot of mental stack in this game. But really strong players who are comfortable just, you know, being in the game's engine are not going to really struggle blocking overheads. So if your main offense, you know, say you're an Enkidu player, right? I think Enkidu is a good example of this. Lots of beginner Enkidu players, they'll kind of just do block string and then go into increase 5C. And this is like their main way of like opening you up. And the reason this doesn't work is because look at the startup. This is frame 29. It's almost half a second of startup just to hit your opponent with an overhead. And the reason it's like this is because overheads in Uni are supposed to be meant to blow up crouch shields. That's their main purpose. And stuff like this isn't going to hit experienced players because they've seen these animations so many times. The question is, how do you make your offense scary? And there's actually a really good video made by OSing, who's a really strong European Uni player, who kind of broke this down. I'll link that in the video description, but I'm going to try to like also give a more concise version here. Basically, the way this works is that Uni pressure, it really comes down to strike throw. Again, overhead really slow. Throw is the only thing in this game that's a mix-up that's like genuinely not reactable. Even like the Carmine fuzzy Ogre's standing overhead. Like Ogre's standing overhead is the fastest overhead in the game, and it's frame 23. Like if you compare that to BlazBlue, like Jin 6A being frame 19, like it's like not even close in terms of the speed, right? Jin 6A is so much harder to block compared to Ogre 6B. But anyways, your main threat is throw. That's the whole game. And that's what it boils down to. You'll notice a character like Byakuya has really strong Oki. Byakuya doesn't have like really messed up high lows. He does have his teleports. Those are kind of a knowledge check. They can be hard to react to. I'm not saying that you block them every time. But the reason why Byakuya web set is so scary is that he can throw you and then combo off the throw, because it's a true unreactable situation. So when it comes down to running your offense, you're trying to get yourself safely into this throw position. That's the goal. Your goal is to make your opponent respect your offense so that you can go for something that leaves you up close and then throw them. That is why you're running offense. When you run offense, this is something actually, shout out to Salty Goku told me when I first started learning Under Night. He told me, what's your goal on offense? And I was like, hit my opponent. Like, what are you saying? He's like, when you are running your offense, your buttons should have a purpose. For example, if you're running these big frame traps, see how Enkidu can stagger these like windows so much? You're doing this because you're demanding respect from your opponent. Because next time you do this, your opponent's not going to be ready for you to go for a run-up throw or something because you've established that you're going to frame trap by delaying your next button. So when you're running your offense, you want to do stuff to make your opponent feel like you're going to keep continuing your offense. You're not going to let down. You're just going to keep block stringing them. You're never going to let them out. And then all of a sudden you're going to go for a throw. And you're going to throw your opponent. That is a main idea with running offense and how to make it scary. The basics are getting your opponents to respect you and your offense so that they feel scared to press. And then once they feel scared to press, that's when you can go for a throw situation. And that's also when you can go for, you know, run up backdash shimmy, or run up assault shimmy, or run up delay button. Just try and crush an OS. Because that's the next step, is once you get in on your opponent, then your opponent is going to be looking to do some sort of OS. So to figure out what OS your opponent is doing is really hard. And I do have a video, I'm going to link it down below. I've made a video about option selects and the tells that you can use for when people, or like what each OS looks like. But the basic idea is that an OS is an option that will just cover multiple things. Like if they're doing an anti-air OS, you want to try to hit them out of the anti-air. If you're not sure what OS your opponent is doing, I did see this question. Someone asked if there's a safe way to check if someone's doing what OS they're doing. Not exactly. Your safest way is going to be run up into throw range and then just hold down back and do nothing. Is this something I would recommend to do like in an actual match? Maybe not, but our goal here is to just learn and improve. And if you're playing against somebody and you just run up and do nothing, when you're in their throw range, remember, throw is unreactable. So they are going to choose an option when you run up on them and are in their face, because you cannot react to this situation. And sometimes you might do this and find that your opponent is doing nothing. You'll be like, I did this, and then they weren't OSing, so like, what am I doing wrong? Well, you just learned that they're not OSing. They're willing to take the throw in this situation, and that's when you can go for a throw. If you run up on somebody, and then they do a delayed anti-air OS, now you're learning. You just learn what they like to do. And that's something you can keep in mind next time you run up and try to exploit their OS. Again, run up backdash shimmy is also a great way to see what OS your opponent is doing. Because it doesn't put them in any block stun, they can't really hide any of their inputs behind entering block stun. So run up backdash will show a lot, and then run up down back will also show what OS they're doing. Also, if you're trying to crush your opponent's OS, generally moves that put you airborne are pretty good at it. So like Enkidu 66B right here is pretty good. Because if your opponent tries to tech a throw with a normal throw tech, then you'll hop over it. But also something like this will beat anti-airs because this isn't counted as like an anti-air move. Run up assault will do something similar. It'll beat that stand throw mashing, but it'll lose to the anti-air. So something like this that puts you airborne is pretty good. Aurier herself also has like a 3C, for example, that she can do. That's a pretty good OS crush. One more thing when opening up your opponent is that leaving small gaps in your offense can also like leak out like throw attempts, for example. If you do like run up like delay 2A and then 2C, you might like catch them trying to like do their anti-air OS, because this little gap in the 2A 2C that has a natural 1-frame gap might catch your opponent pressing something to get out of this situation. Most characters have natural 1-frame gaps, but if not, you can like manually delay a button as well. And then again, this is another thing where if you manually delay a button and like your opponent is not pressing, then that's when you can go back to like, you know, your opponent's respecting you and you can go for a throw. So it all kind of circles back around. Another question that I got was like, how do you beat rising normal OSs? Because as everyone knows, they're pretty annoying. You run up and you try to throw somebody and then like you get rising Jade like that. There's a couple ways you can crack this, and I think this is really strong in Uni, so I think it's important to talk about. I'm going to use Gordeau here because Killicobes asked this question and also mentioned Seth. There's a couple ways to do it. So first of all, you can do like a delayed anti-air button. So if you like run up delay 2C, you might catch them, but they might time it right where it doesn't catch them. But this is going to be more so like hitting them out of like their jump startup with the anti-air option. For example, if you're playing a different character, you might like, you know, Eltnum. Or let's go with like Hyde, for example. You do like run up 3C and you might like snipe them jumping. Another way of catching this is doing a bunch of lows. So like if you run up on someone and you do gapless lows, then you'll catch their fuzzy jump. So like if you're fighting against Merkava, for example, if a Merkava is doing like a fuzzy dive kick like out of your pressure, then just doing like gapless buttons into like 2C or like lows that your character has, you can also stop them from OSing so much more easily. I think repeat lows in Uni are really strong because a lot of the time people are dialing in some sort of OS option that might require them to stand up or go for a jump or something like that. So things like this where you can do gapless lows, I think are really strong at cracking people's defense, because people get a little antsy, and if they try to do any sort of little input, then it will catch them if they're not holding specifically down or down back. You can try leaving tiny gaps, but just be careful, because if you leave too big of a gap, then they might jump over it and then snipe you. One question that I saw that I thought was interesting was that combos, someone said combos are too long. And that's something that kind of just takes getting used to. It's kind of going to be up to you if you are like okay to like, that's something you like, that's something you don't like, you know. Maybe you're wondering, what should I do during these combos? I like long combos because I just love doing combos. So I'm happy to do them. And I also like long combos because when I'm getting comboed, it actually gives me time to take a break and kind of just look at the game's surroundings. I'm on Gordo, he's playing Izumi. And I'm going to talk about like how long combos affect like how you can use them to your advantage when you're getting hit. So I've just gotten hit. And now I'm getting comboed to the corner. In this situation, I've just looked at the grid. So I looked at the grid, and I've noticed, okay, I'm down on grid. I am going to have to do something. I'm going to have to take a risk in order to win this cycle. That's what I've gained by being in this combo. He dropped, so that kind of goes away now. But you'll notice that I do these two buttons, right? And then I rebeat and try to go for a concentrate. Because I'm thinking about, I need to do something to win this cycle. And Big Black has the right read that I'm going to be passive and runs up and presses a button. So I reacted to this rebeat and then pressed. I hit him. And now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, I have enough time when I hit my opponent here to recognize I'm going to go for a side swap. I have 5 blocks of grid. I already have 125 meter. Because I have so much, I'm probably just going to spend some meter. I don't. Because the combo for the side swap is kind of weird, so I just decide not to spend meter. I get hit here. The first thing I do when I get hit here, I look up at my health bar. And I think, okay, he's got 200 meter. I just got hit by a 5A. I'm alive. He said, I'm alive, so I'll be okay on this combo. We're going to reset to neutral. I'd run up like an idiot and just get hit trying to kill the bubble because I pressed 2B instead of like 4B or something. So yeah, so this is a great example. So I hit this kind of funny whiff punish with this Gord 66E. Let me go back a little bit. So funny interaction, but then this is a good situation. I hit this combo and I'm looking at the grid and I'm thinking, okay, so Gordo routing, you can use force function, but I'm looking at the grid and I'm thinking, do I want to use force function here? Because I might end up losing the cycle. And I look and I say, okay, I'm more than up a block of grid. Cycle is getting close. I can do a force function here, and by the time this combo ends, I will still have the cycle. So I'll use the force function to get the extra corner carry. I'll go for the ender, and then I will win this cycle because the combo lasted so long. Something that's really cool, actually, is that because the combos last so long, you can manipulate the grid game a lot, and it's really cool because you can decide to end your combo early and go for some grid, maybe just drop and then concentrate, or maybe if your character can combo into VO, you do that, and then you try to use the extra grid gain from VO to steal the cycle because you weren't supposed to win it. There's a lot of things you can do during a combo, and even though you might see lots of times opponents just doing the same combo over and over again, the grid is what gives you decision making here as the person doing a combo. And then when you're on defense, you have time to think about the next situation. So during this combo, Big Black is looking at his health, he's looking at his resources, he's looking at my resources. I don't have meter, I only have Vorpal. So if I want to extend my offense in this situation, I have to spend Vorpal, which means that he might end up respecting my offense. He does not. Because he thinks I'm going to just keep frame trapping and then reset with CS. But because I didn't do that, then I end up baiting the DP and getting hit. Also, Izumi's DP kind of sucks. But my point is that he had time to think about what he wanted to do on defense while he was getting comboed, because he had enough time to look at the HP, look at his resources, look at mine, and then come to a decision. Boosh. Someone asked how much should I practice a combo before like taking it online? And to what I want to say is that you don't need to know like your whole perfect combo before you can play games. Like if you can only do this part of the combo for Byakuya, and say after this part of the combo, like you always mess up like this air string and you never get your Oki or something like that, that's okay. Go up to here and then button and then press steer ender. Steer ender is just, you know, the 5AB follow-up. Do your combo as much as you can, and then when you don't know how to continue, this is a great way to just stabilize and just get a good knockdown. But in general, just keep it simple. If all you can do is Rekka EX, that's totally fine. Are you going to be missing out on damage? Yes, of course. But there's so many things to work on in a given period that it's okay. Your combos are always going to be improving, much like your offense is always going to be getting better. Your defense, your grid game, all of it's going to be improving at the same time, which is why the game is going to feel overwhelming, because there's a lot to work on. But everything will also get better, and you know, you can choose what you want to work on to improve it. If you want to like get more used to just hitting combos in matches, this is my extremely underrated tip, is go to this part of the menu. Just fight CPUs, because CPUs will just like move around and get hit and stuff, and fighting an opponent in a moving environment is going to give you a lot more practice to hitting your opponent and converting into combos. Versus just doing them in training mode with no pressure or anything. Once your opponent starts moving around, you're starting to be like, wait, whoa, this is like really weird to like, oh, did I hit my opponent? Oh, I wasn't ready. Oh, okay, I need to just like, okay. Okay, didn't hit them. Oh no. Oh, they're running offense. Oh, I finally got a hit. Okay, can I remember my combo? Can I actually hit this? Oh, no. But you get the point. Just hitting a moving target is going to be really helpful for learning how to convert off of weird hits and getting used to just comboing off of a moving opponent. And that'll translate to matches online like a lot better than you think. So if you think you've got a combo down, you think you can do it consistently, I encourage you to go fight some CPUs and then see how you do. One more thing that comes up regarding combos is doing dash normals. So, for example, this Kaguya combo, you get to the point where you have to do this JC into the 6xB. And people struggle with this, and there's a couple tips I'm going to give you here. So first of all, don't use A plus B to do this. It will feel really weird, and I don't recommend it. You're going to get like 5B like that a lot. I don't use it. The 6-6 input has a lot more of a buffer window in combos. So if you're doing this, it's going to be a lot easier to buffer that input with the 6-6 input. You can do this dash input a lot earlier than you think. Like the dash B input. You can see I'm doing it pretty early. Also, you'll notice on the input display, I'm holding forward after tapping twice. Like the same way you would for a running input, if you're just running in neutral. I'm holding forward, and that helps the dash button come out more consistently. And then hopefully that'll help you finish your combos. I did it wrong. One question I see is how to approach defense. In general, playing defense in this game, as we were kind of talking about earlier with running offense, your main mix-up is strike throw. So your goal on defense is going to be to look for when a throw is coming. That is mainly how you want to structure getting out of offense. If you're mashing out on offense, it's generally because like you have a read that they're going to go for a throw, or they're just like leaving a really big gap in their pressure, and you're putting a read that you are aware of that. When you're blocking, you know, Wagner pressure, right, for an example, it's really hard for you to find like a space to mash out. Like her frame data is really good. She can space out really well. She can put herself plus. It's going to be really hard to get out. But eventually you kind of notice These are all mids, right? Like, the mix-up threat, it's not like you're gonna block a bunch and then get hit by a DBFZ assist call, Dragon Rush mix-up, Super Dash 50-50, you know? That's not gonna be happening. All it is in Uni is strike throw, is what it really boils down to. So you should focus your defense on how you want to make a read on them eventually going for a throw versus, like, when should I mash? And, like, teching this throw is going to be how you can get out of these situations versus, like, taking a risk with a button press. Something that's important to mention is that when you throw someone in this game, you have to be out of block zone for 8 frames. And the tech window is 12 frames. So if you combine that window, you have to leave a massive frame window just to run up and throw your opponent. And because of that, generally, going for a throw is a big risk from your opponent. And that's going to be pretty hard for your opponent to, like, convince you to do. That's why you see all these players down backing the whole time, and then eventually they go for a throw, and then they tech the throw. Because you're leaving a big gap, it's going to be a bit telegraphed, and that's what you should be looking for on defense as well. Because on defense, again, there's not much of a true mix-up threat here. You should be looking for when the throw is coming, and then playing around that. That's the main idea. You can do so by kind of like, you'll notice that some players like to go for a throw at the end of the cycle because that'll give them the cycle. So you might recognize that a certain player tries to win the cycle by going for a throw. That's when you can take a read and you can either tech that throw, or if you're feeling really confident, you can like press 5A on defense and like stuff out the dash up attempt. To the person who asked about how you stuff in like redashes, you can't really stuff redashes. Like, you can't react to someone dashing and then pressing. Compared to a game like Street Fighter, where like your dash is like a full commitment and then you press, you can press while dashing in this game, right? So if you see, you know, someone running at you, like, it's almost like too late to do something unless they're running at you in neutral like this. You know, if I see my opponent running and then doing this, then you might be able to stuff the approach. But in terms of like redashing like this, it's pretty brutal to see when to actually press. So that's why just down backing and trying to tech a throw is going to be the generally safer option compared to just pressing buttons and hoping you stuff your opponent. Also, taking the throw is very fine to do. Like, Izumi throw is a bad example because it gives a combo in the corner. But look at this throw. 1,500 damage. Versus, you know, getting hit by, you know, just like any 2B or any button or whatever. Compare 1,500 damage and no Oki to 3.5 plus bubble. Like, and then you're holding a mix-up, right? This also applies very much to Hyde, which is a character players struggle with a lot. You should basically never tech a throw against this character mid-screen. Like, he has to do a very specific timed 6-6C to hit your wake-up timing on back tech. And if you no tech, then you can actually wake up and punish the Hyde player if you time the wake-up correctly. Like, the risk reward here you can see is so skewed. Like, yes, does it feel like you can never get out of Hyde and he's gonna block string you forever? Yeah. But like, again, blocking in this game, not bad. You're not getting opened up. If you're getting hit by this, this is a 30 frame move. That one might be on you. But there's not much of a mix up here. In the corner, obviously, it's gonna be a bit harder to make that adjustment. But you're still taking way less damage from a throw compared to, you know, backdash 6B into, you know, whatever combo you saw on Reddit. Another thing that I saw people asking about was like knowledge check pressure and like infinite block strings. Like, sometimes you're playing against somebody and it's like you don't know what to do. So like, for example, you know, Enkidu's got this frame trapping stomp that he can do that leaves him +2 on block. and it's very difficult to deal with. Your two main tools when dealing with infinite block string is going to be dash blocking. Thank you for the follow. Dash blocking, shielding, and sometimes both. So if you feel like you can't, you know, this is like frame trap into plus frame, like I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Shielding will make this +2 move, for example, -2. And then you can go for a press. You might find yourself in a situation where even if you shield, you try to press, then you might, you know, whiff, and even though you shielded, it's your turn, you get hit. That's where, like, dash blocking is pretty important, because dash blocking will help you mess up your opponent's block string ranges, and then you can get into a more favorable range for yourself. So for example, a good example, or an even better example, is going to be Wagner. This move is going to be like spaced out and then into +2, and you're like, fuck, how do I get out? This is another situation where you can shield this move. You can see here, if you shield this move, now Phonon is +1, and then that makes it a lot more favorable for you to press. Dash blocking is also an option, and dash blocking will sometimes change the frame data here. You can dash block to mess up spacings like this. See how now I'm +5 because I dash blocked that move before? And your opponent is going to be like, oh shoot, he dash blocked. Like, what do I, like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. This isn't where I thought my opponent would be in my spacing. And then you get to take your turn. So dash blocking to make your opponent second guess their own spacing can be really good. And then shielding against moves where you generally can't contest, but because of the frame differences of shield, they allow you to test or contest, are how you can beat these like infinite block string situations. I had some questions about how to use chain shift when you have none of this. When you have no reversal, no CSDP available, can't do CS into EX. Your CS is gonna feel a bit weaker on the offense or on defense because you don't have a DP. Using CS without the threat of a reversal is obviously going to lose a little bit of its strength, but that doesn't remove it entirely because you can still chain shift and then use that time to assess the situation. So a good example would be like Phonon or Linne 5A rebeat. For example, if the Linne player does this, a rebeat of Byakuya, you CS, and then you see them jumping, B-pillar, right? There's an example of something Phonon can do. Or when you see Linne jump like that, you can CS and use that. You do have to be careful though, because you might CS too early, and then you won't really get any information, right? So it's going to be more about putting yourself in a spot where your CS has more value. In this specific range, Phonon's BDP is really strong. So CSing when your opponent is at this range is really good for Phonon because BDP suddenly becomes this death zone that Phonon can now see. And if you're in that death zone, then you will get shot by the B-pillar. Generally, if you don't have a reversal, try to put yourself in a situation where chain shifting will help you. So in the Phonon example, we talked about CSing in a situation where like you CS here and then you would do Phonon B-pillar because they're at the B-pillar range. You can kind of do it in a different order where you can like B-pillar and then CS. So I'm using Chaos as an example here, but if your opponent is leaving like a big enough gap, then you can do like 236A CS, which is a fairly quick move. And then you can kind of use that to get yourself out of the corner. But if being able to just put your opponent in like some sort of block stun, like if you can press and get them in block stun, then you can do something like this and then block string your way out of the corner. Someone asked me how you can practice your OSing. Again, I do have a full video about option selects that I will link below. But if you want to practice your OSing in-game, there is actually in-game tutorials that will tell you how to do the option selects. So if you go to the expert categories and then go to the throw situation, you can see here a bunch of OSs listed. The crouching A option select and the anti-air option select are the main ones I would recommend to look at. The backdash one isn't as useful, and the jump attack one's kind of weird. But the 2AD and the 3CAD one are both really helpful. So this will tell you if the opponent grabs you, you'll do a throw break. If they strike, you'll block. If they do nothing or assault, you'll perform an anti-air attack. So the CPU is going to run up and do 2A. It's going to run up assault, or it's going to run up throw. And I'm going to beat all of those options. I'm going to beat the 2A by blocking it. And then I'm going to beat the assault by anti-airing it. And then if they run at me, I'll tech the throw. And you can set this up yourself in your own training mode by just setting a CPU to do these 3 different things if you want to practice with your own character instead of Hyde. And you can practice getting your own reps in by making 3 of your own recordings and then just let them randomly play. When you're deciding which OS to do, pay attention to what your opponent is doing. For example, if your opponent is never doing run-up assault as a throw shimmy, you do not need to use your anti-air OS because they're not assaulting at you. They're not jumping at you. That's not something you need to worry about because they're not doing it. If they're shimmying you by doing run-up backdash, for example, then maybe you do a 2BAD that will catch them shimmying. But if they run up to you and they throw, then you'll tech the throw. And then if they backdash, you'll do a 2B. So it's important to decide which OS to do. Not only when to OS, but which OS to do. How valuable do you think gimmicks and knowledge checks are? I think they're valuable for mental stack. So just putting more stuff on your opponent's mind is going to make them a bit more hesitant to do other options. Some players are going to be like really good to the point where gimmicks don't like really get to them at all. I do think they're worth representing here and there just to like put more thought into your opponent's mind, because if that makes them a little bit slower to react to something, then you can take advantage of that. How do I develop a game plan? I think it's important to look at what your character does and where they're strong and try and take advantage of that. So for example, Kaguya is all about the corner grenade setups and her combo throw in the corner, and she's really strong in the corner. Mid-screen, not so much. Her knockdowns don't give that much. She can't really set anything up. So your goal is to get your opponent to the corner. So that's when you say, okay, I'm going to do combos that prioritize corner carry, for example. And that's sort of a game plan that you can come into when you're developing your character, or like how you want to approach certain matchups. For example, if you're fighting a character that you like, you know, is hard for you in neutral, if you're playing Kaguya or you're playing Byakuya, you know, those characters don't have the strongest neutral. You can think to yourself, if I can hit my opponent one time, I can set up this corner situation and then get things going. So it's important to recognize where your character is at their strongest and see how you can get there in the safest way possible. Another example I'll just quickly mention is like Seth. Some people think Seth's offense doesn't feel that great when there's not an orb out. And that's partially true. You know, when his offense feels a lot better when he has an orb out. And so does his neutral. And so is his mix-up. And so is his defense, because it makes your opponent scared. Notice how everything's better when you have an orb out? Your goal and your game plan should be to get an orb out. So if you're full screen, you know, you can do something like this and get an orb out. It's going to be a bit matchup dependent on how, you know, you get this orb out. Might be harder to jump against certain characters, so you might have to put a bit more thought behind it. Your general game plan, you know, is going to be to put this orb out as Seth, as another example of a game plan. Approaching neutral in this game, your basic option is going to be dash blocking, which is done by pressing dash and then going to down back. I do this personally using the A-B macro, or not a macro, I just press the A and B buttons together, like the buttons next to each other at the same time. Some players use the macro, some players use the buttons themselves. You don't see the 6-6 dash block input too often. It's mainly reserved for combos. Whereas with A plus B, you can get back to down back quicker. You spend less time not holding down back, which means you're less vulnerable. Because you can block immediately out of a dash in this game, which means you can be really safe if you can do it fast enough. And that's going to be your kind of game plan when you kind of like don't know what to do in these longer range matchups. So like if you're fighting Yuzu, you want to just, you know, you're going to be dash blocking. That's kind of just how it is. That's kind of how you play against these characters with longer ranges. You're going to be wanting to get yourself into a situation where you're successful, like, or where you're favored which can be hard to do, or you can make a big read on your opponent's movement. Like, lots of Yuzu players will get bored and, like, do this teleport. And, like, when you see them teleport, you can, you know, take advantage of that. That's an example. If your character has good options with meter, you can play a bit more safely and just play for the cycle. But I would say in terms of your neutral, dash blocking is your main go-to in terms of moving towards your opponent safely. And then once you get in your character's strong button range, that's when you can start to do stuff. Every character has a range where they generally excel at. And when you're in that character's range, then it becomes a threat. It's like, you know, this is Law in 5B range. You don't get to do anything when you're at Law in 5B range. He gets to own that range. So Byakuya Web Oki, pretty annoying. This is the Byakuya Web Oki. When you're in this situation, there's a couple important things to know. So first of all, the webs are not meaty, and they will activate after 12 frames. So you can land here and technically do something. Like you can see on Tsurugi, I can wake up 66B, and like I'll escape. But if I do it too slow, you'll see I'll get caught, right? So this is not something I would like genuinely recommend you do. Especially because Byakuya can just press 2B and just kill you and just hit you with very little risk. Especially when he meets with 2-2. So this situation is where you're going to be in a lot. You're going to have this web above you, and you're going to have this web in front of you. And this is the really hard situation to get out of. You'll notice if you stand block this web, that it goes away. And that will help you move out of the corner. But, as I'm sure you know, Byakuya is a character with lots of lows. If you go to stand up into this web, and he's doing a low, you're going to get caught. So the way you get out of this offense is going to be by looking when Byakuya is out of lows, and then stand blocking for a second to get rid of the top web. That's your main goal when you're trying to get out of this Oki. So I'm going to look for this 2-2. After this 2-2 that Byakuya does, the only thing he can do is 2-2C. There's no other low option he can do. He is done with his block string. So when you see this move, this is how you know for sure you can stand block for just a second, just long enough to clear the Oki. Is this get blown up by 2-2C? No, because there's a super flash. So you can just see the super flash and then just go back to holding down. Another important thing to note is that when you CS here, webs activate frame 1 after chain shift. So if you wake up CS, you can no longer... Remember when I said you can wake up 66B? If you CS, you can no longer do that. The webs will activate immediately. So if you CS, that means you can guarantee get rid of these webs, which is nice. But just know that you can't do anything anymore. So sometimes, you know, you might find this worth it if you're just like, man, I'm going to just CS and get rid of these webs. Some characters have unique options that they can represent. Enkidu's an example where he can wake up C parry and it'll clear all these webs. If Byakuya is going to throw you, he has to commit to the throw like immediately, basically. So he can throw you before this web connects, but you have to hit that throw like really fast. You can see that there. But when you're picking an option against Byakuya, I think it's important to not hesitate. And whatever you decide to do, like if you decide to mash and wake up, don't block for a little bit and then press or something. Like you're gonna get caught by the webs. Like if you're gonna just wake up and then just like 6-6C or do something crazy, like just let it rip as soon as you get up. You know, don't try and get fancy with it. Dash blocking is also fine here, but just be careful you don't mess it up because you will die, and it's generally not worth doing unless you're not really confident in it. I need to get some water and use the bathroom. And then if anyone else has more questions, I'll answer, but I think we're done.